Hashtag BOTT with back. The GOAT. The GOAT. Right now we on Miami Beach. We here on the strip. With the family, you know. Hopefully we get into some Indian mounds down here in Miami. Hashtag BOTT with back.
Ain't nobody stopping me. Operation Lockdown.
Peace. We always been here. We always been here.
Hey, we were already there.
It's the U, baby. The Tequesta culture occupied the southeast region of Florida from approximately the 500 BCE, the late Archaic Glade First period, through Spanish colonization and to the time when Spain turned Florida over to Britain, 1763 AD. The chief village, also known as Tequesta via early Spanish records, was located at the mouth of the Miami River and the Biscayne Bay in what is now known Miami-Dade County. Their territories extended to at least the north half of Broward County and southern and central Palm Beach County. It is thought they were closely allied to their northern neighbors, the Jagar and the Asa, but may have been at odds with the more dominant Calusa tribes of the southwest Florida.
It's sort of interesting to think about the capture of all of these shipwreck victims over the years before Florida was settled, because not all of the first slaves here were black. Most of them, in fact, were white, but they were slaves of the Calusa and the Timucua.
Estimates of the number of the Tequesta at the time of the initial European contact range from 800 to 10,000, while estimates of the number of the Calusa range from 2,000 to 20,000. Occupational use of the outposts in the Florida Keys may have been shared between two tribes. Spanish records note that the Tequesta village of Cape Sable, but Calusa artifacts outnumber Tequesta artifacts by 4 to 1 at the island's archaeological site. What we know about the Tequesta tribe comes both from Spanish accounts dating to the 16th century and archaeology done in recent decades at the Miami Circle. Like other prehistoric coastal Floridians, the Tequesta had no need for agriculture to support a thriving and complex society. Instead, they relied upon the bounds of their environment, hunting, gathering, and utilizing the rich marine resources of the bays, rivers, and oceans. Fishing was a year-round activity, and the archaeology of the shell middens shows that the Tequesta caught diverse fishes and marine mammals, including mako sharks, swordfish, and right whales.
North Atlantic right whales are baleen whales that feed on microscopic organisms. They can grow up to 52 feet long and live 70 years or longer. North Atlantic right whales primarily live along the east coast of the United States and Canada. They feed and mate in the northeast for most of the year. In the winter, some migrate down the coast where pregnant females give birth in the warmer waters off the southeastern United States. They travel alone or in small groups and can be seen swimming and eating together at the surface.
The Tequesta were expert wood carvers, and it's believed that the makers of dugout canoes held an honored role. The canoes were both used along the coast and deep into the Everglades. To maintain political relationships with neighboring tribes, alliances were often sealed by marriage. Artifacts found throughout their territory, and particularly at the Miami Circle, suggest that the Tequesta participated in a far-reaching trade network, that spider web I've been telling y'all about. They would provide items from the coast such as pumice, marine shells, shark tooth, and dried whale meat in return for items like stone tools and minerals for making paint. The first record of European contact with the Tequesta was in 1513 by Juan Ponce de Leon when he discovered the Florida coast. He sailed into a harbor he called Tequesta, and based on the reported location and description of the people he met, it was Biscayne Bay. In 1565, one of the ships of Pedro Menendez de Alvarez's fleet took refuge from a storm in Biscayne Bay. The main Tequesta village was located there, and Menendez was well received. He was well received because they said that Tequesta were friendly Indians, but the other ones, like the Temuco and the Calusa, were not friendly. That's when we see the people that embarked on that land became slaves, or shipwrecked on that land became slaves. Let's continue. So much so that when they left Tequesta, the chief nephew journeyed with the Jesuit priest, the Jesuit priest to Havana to be educated. Educated on what? The chief's brother went to Spain with Menendez, where he converted to Christianity. You got a lot right here. Let's break it down. Listen.
We discussed Greater Miami's rich, variegated history, beginning with the Native Americans who lived in today's Deep South Dade County, and likely elsewhere, at least 10,000 years ago. Subsequent peoples of differing backgrounds appeared with the entry of Spaniards nearly 9,500 years later, as a Jesuit missionary and an assemblage of Spanish soldiers joined a Tequesta Indian community on the north bank of the Miami River near the mouth of the stream in 1567. The mission was part of a wide-ranging series of missions crafted by Pedro Menendez Avilés, the Spanish conqueror of Florida, for the conversion of native populations to Roman Catholicism, as well as for alliance building. A devout Catholic, Menendez organized these mission outposts that stretched from today's South Carolina along both coasts of Florida and along today's Panhandle in the northwest sector of the state. Brother Francisco Villarreal, S.J., the initials refer to the Society of Jesus, commonly known as the Jesuits, a religious order of the Catholic Church, arrived on the north bank of the Miami River, establishing a mission at Tequesta, the Spanish name for both the native Floridians there as well as that site. Soon after, Menendez showed up and officially inaugurated the mission of Tequesta. Menendez left behind 30 soldiers and some workers, who erected palisades around the settlement, erected a cross, fashioned from a pine tree, in its center, and built 28 rudimentary huts. When Menendez returned to the mission, he was impressed that the natives both great and small took part in devotions twice daily in front of a large cross. The Tequestas also staged a dramatic play for him. When he left the mission for the final time, the Spanish admiral took 3 Tequestas with him, including Chief Tequesta, to Seville, where they were baptized into the Catholic faith in the great cathedral. Brother Villarreal reported in a revealing letter that I have been teaching doctrine to the Indians up to 15 years of age. Those who attend, most of them, know the 4 prayers and nearly all the commandments. Villarreal also taught doctrine in the house of the chief with many adults present. Additionally, the Jesuit held fiestas with litanies to the cross, put on 2 comedies, having to do with the war between men and the world, the flesh and the devil, the clash between good and evil. There was a downside to the mission, as captured by Brother Villarreal in the same missive, which can be found in the Church of the Jesuit in Rome. Villarreal complained about the pestiferous mosquitoes, and the resultant sleepless nights. Only by sleeping amid clouds of smoke, he explained, could he endure. The Jesuit complained that there was hostility between the soldiers and the natives. The Tequestas were non-agricultural peoples who fished, hunted, and gathered fruits. At times, food was in short supply, causing periodic hunger, which prevented Tequestas from attending spiritual gatherings. Within 1 year of the mission's establishment, the Spanish closed it owing to an acceleration in the fighting between the Tequestas and Spanish soldiers. In the following year, however, a second mission opened on the north bank of the Miami River, probably for the fact that Don Diego, the Christianized name of Chief Tequesta's brother, was now a zealous convert, who had been bedazzled by his baptismal ceremony. Father Antonio Sedano, S.J. came to Tequesta after braving stormy seas to reach his destination. The Jesuit received a hearty greeting from Don Diego, who assured him that his people wished to become Christians. We know little of the settlement, though, other than it was manned by 20 to 30 Spanish soldiers and was surrounded by a cross made of pine trees, placed there by native Miamians. The mission was abandoned in 1570 for reasons unknown. 173 years later, in 1743, the Jesuits returned to the Miami River with their most ambitious mission yet in response to a petition for their return by Native Americans in the Florida Keys. Called the Pueblo de Santa Maria de Loreto, the Miami mission consisted of 2 Spanish Jesuits, Fathers Joseph Maria Monaco and Joseph Javier Alana who, with considerable help, built a stockade near water's edge, an area today that stood near the footprint of the parking garage for the Wachovia Tower in downtown Miami. A population survey indicated that only 180 native Miamians were in that area and they were unhappy with the presence of the Jesuits in their midst.
Oseo, let's pause right there. Hope y'all paid attention. If not, please rewind it and get this into your diet. This is how you take away a culture of a people. Shackles don't always mean around the hands and feet. It's mostly around the brain. So when this said that they was teaching doctrination, they was teaching doctrine up to the age of 15. So what they did was take the children and indoctrinate them. The Jesuits done this, and indoctrinate the children, get rid of their cultures, their language, their customs, their foods.
That's pagan.
Right? This is what happens. This is how you lose that. When people
Question my phenotype.
in the Americas, and I said Amani Yawia, and they say, well, what's your language? Do you speak it? This is what happened. You take the children and indoctrinate them, and then they carry that on, and they lose the cultures, the customs, the foods, the traditions, right? But some of our ancestors or elders kept some of it and gave it to us. This is what happens.
Kill the Indian, save the man.
In March 1567, Menendez returned to the Tequesta and established a mission within a stockade situated near the south bank of the Miami River, below the native village. Menendez left a contingent of 30 soldiers and the Jesuit brother Francisco Villarreal, who had learned some of the Tequesta language from the chief's nephew in Havana. As Villarreal reported some success and converted the docile Tequesta, but for some undocumented reason, the soldiers executed an uncle of the chief, that's Chief Tequesta. This ruined the trust that the Jesuits had established, and Brother Francisco was forced to abandon the mission in 1570. The South Florida indigenous culture called Tequesta constructed the Miami Circle. They chose the site where the Miami River meets the Biscayne Bay and with the Everglades to the west to build their village. The location gave access to the offshore reefs in the ocean and fish from the river, plus an abundance of plants from the Everglades. With all the resources of food and raw materials for tools, the village became large and occupied both banks of the river. Dr. Robert S. Carr, who discovered the Miami Circle on the south bank of Miami River mouth in 1998, said that the Tequesta settlement may have reached as far west as Miami Avenue and as far north as present-day Flagler Street. He has been excavating in the area since 2005, and through the course of the uncovering extensive village complex, burial grounds, mittens, and a circle, Royal Palm Circle, with almost the same dimensions as the Miami Circle, probably the foundations of a dwelling. Royal Palm Circle, named because of the location, is beneath the ruins of Henry Flagler's Grand Royal Palm Hotel. It's a double ring of post holes and basins, and not as elaborate as sustainable as the Miami Circle. However, its discovery serves as further vindication of the context of 1998 Declaration of the Age and cultural affiliations of the Miami Circle. Now, we're going to get into the foods and get into the ancestors and the descendants of these Tequestan Indians, so-called first Miamians. Let's go. The Tequesta were a small, peaceful Native American tribe. They were one of the first tribes in South Florida, and they settled near the Biscayne Bay in the present-day Miami area. They built many villages at the area. They built many villages at the mouth of the Miami River and along the coastal islands. The chief lived in a main village at the mouth of the Miami River. Like the other tribes in South Florida, the Tequesta were hunters and gatherers. They relied mainly on fish, shellfish, nuts, and berries for food. The men caught sharks, shellfish, sea cows, and porpoise in the waters of the Biscayne Bay and the Miami River, while the women and children collected clams, conchs, oysters, and turtle eggs in the shallow waters. The sea cow, the manatee, that's the picture you see to your left, was considered a delicacy and served mainly to the chiefs and other prominent leaders. The Tequesta also gathered palmetto berries, cocoa plums, sea grapes, and palm nuts to eat. In the Everglades, they hunted bear, deer, wild boar, and small mammals. The Tequesta made flour by grinding up the roots of certain plants. Unfortunately, these food sources were not very plentiful along the southern coast, so the Tequesta never became a large and powerful tribe compared to the western neighbors, the Calusa, the mighty Calusa. The Tequesta used shells and shark teeth for various of tools. These included hammers, chisel, fish hooks, drinking cups, and spearheads. Shark tooth were used to carve out logs to make canoes. And they were very good at making canoes. We're going to figure out where did they travel with these canoes. Very important. Let's go.
Gary Cooper killing off the Indians, when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. It comes as a great shock that the Indians were you, that the Indians were you, that the Indians were you.
South Miami, when we came here, they only had one policeman and they had one fireman. There was about, in the city itself, maybe 200 to 300 residents.
Well, if you went down on Kendall Drive and you across the railroad track, there was nothing but fields of all kinds of farm fields, tomatoes, things like that, beans, as far out as you could go, all the way to Chrome.
I lived in a neighborhood where everybody loved everybody, and all children were the village's children.
Well, my family moved from the Gables here in 1954. Till you got your whistle at dusk, you were out just like little Indians, That
the Indians were you.
Now, let's remember, in 1565, 1566, Pedro Menendez took Tequestan Indians to Seville. This is in Spain. And at that time, the ruling power would have been King Philip II. But if we roll the chapters back, we go back to 1492, the Reconquista, when Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand took over that area after the fall of the Moors, who controlled that area for nearly 1,000 years. So when we look at this image and we say that Christopher Columbus, so-called Christopher Columbus, took Indians to Seville with Isabel and Ferdinand, these are the depictions that they're saying that the people look like. Look like they might have what we call woolly hair afros, copper-colored tone, and this is under their great saint. So let's look at this and break this down. Listen.
A century or so later, just after Columbus's New World discoveries, Queen Isabel built a more European-style wing to the palace. Anticipating a big business in plunder and trade, she built this to administer Spain's New World ventures. The chapel is dedicated to Santa Maria de los Buenos Aires. Saint Mary of the Good Winds was the patron saint of navigators and a favorite of Columbus. This altar painting dates from shortly after Columbus died and features what's considered the first and most accurate portrait of the great explorer on the left. It's also thought to be the first painting of Indians done in Europe. The Virgin's cape seems to protect everyone under it, even the Indians, even the Indians, even the Indians, even the Indians.
That the Indians were you.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
We always been here. We always been here.
Hey, we were raised there.
We a tribe at, nigga, we a tribe at. We a tribe at, nigga, we a tribe at. We a tribe at, nigga, we a tribe at. We a tribe at, nigga, don't try that. Yeah. But yeah, hashtag BOTG, we're back. We gonna continue going on. Y'all know how we do it. 100.
You want to donate, is a way to donate. $3730B. That's a capital B. That's Cash App.
Memoirs, Escalante Fontenando, Florida, 1575. No one knows that country so well as I know it. Who writes this? For I was a captive among its inhabitants, from a child the age of 13 years until I was 30 years old. I speak 4 languages, but not the language of the Asa and the Jaya. We know the Asa and the Jaya was part or allies with the Tequesta, right? So, which is the country I've never traveled into, is what he's saying in his memoirs. Because he was with the Calusa. But we're going to get into that story. Let's get a little more. We're not going to talk about the memoir too much more, because you're going to see how we built onto it. You know, break the mountain down to a pebble, and we built on the spider web. That's where your power at, on the spider web in the center. So we'll get to it. Chapter 1 from the memoirs. And you also can find this from the U.S. Library of Congress. That's in the United States of America. For my people that's all over the world, I appreciate you tuning in. It says, have the honor to inform you that Florida and the Lecain Islands, and we know the Lecain Islands, we saw what the people look like. Let's bring that back up. Okay, we got it? Are situated on one side of the Bahamas, Old Channel, which passes between Havana, which is Cuba, and Florida. This is, when I was talking about the traveling in the canoes, this is what they were doing, the Tequesta, the Asa, the Jaya. They were island hopping to these other islands for trade and intermarrying, you know, building family. Like I say, the spider web. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Fontenot, what happened in his story for him to get, and how he ended up living with the Calusa, the mighty Calusa. Let's read his story. The writer of this memoir was born in Cartagena in 1538 and was shipwrecked and captured off the coast of Florida by the Indians, he was spared and brought up among them and learned to speak 4 Indian languages, and now calls attention to what is now called as a polysynthesis structure, that is different languages. He afterwards returned to Spain and accompanied the expedition of Don Pedro Mendez to Florida in 1565 as an interpreter. This memoir says that Britain is particularly valued in locating the ancient Indian tribes of Florida and was written after the death of Menendez. So he was captured, like we saw in the beginning of the video when the professor said a lot of the shipwreck victims became slaves of the Calusa and the Timucua.
It's sort of interesting to think about the capture of all of these shipwreck victims over the years before Florida was settled, because not all of the first slaves here were black. Most of them, in fact, were white, but they were slaves of the Calusa and the Timucua.
So this is reaffirming that. So this is the primary source. This is a memoir of Fontenot. And he said that's what happened with him. He became an interpreter and a slave for the Calusa. A lot of his other captors and other men that was on the ship, they were unalived by the Indians, by the Calusa tribes. So let's continue. Letter of Christopher Columbus on his first voyage to America, 1492. This is the letter that he wrote to Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand. Now, we know that he went to the conjoining islands. Let's read this part here. To the first island I discovered, I gave the name of San Salvador, in commemoration of his divine majesty, who was wonderfully granted at all this. The Indians call it Guanahani, and we know where that's at. Let's bring that back up for the 3rd or 4th time. We're gonna double back to make sure it's understood what the people look like that Christopher Columbus took back to Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand. Let's get it. Salute, salute, salute. I want to appreciate y'all taking the time to rock out with me. I enjoy bringing y'all this type of information. This was the Tequesta Indians out of Miami. Then we're going to move to Calusa and other tribes so we can get it understood, find ourselves in the story. Because when I was told about the American Indian being indoctrinated, they just gave me a picture of a pale person with long black hair, and that's how they all look. That was told. So our job is to bust them out down to the pebble, give you the best that I can. If you want to please donate, $3730B, that's a capital B. The link will be in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't, and share. Let's get the word out. Let's build this thing back up for the ancestors one time. Being that we are doing edutainment, shout out to KRS-One, I gotta leave you with edutainment video, you know. So check out the video. I might kill the volume because I'm gonna switch the beat because of copyright infringement, but you can see how our culture is infectious to the whole world. This is a Cuban brother playing the role of Michael Jackson. So enjoy it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Back for what's mine. Shout out to the ancestors. Till next time I see you. 100, I'm Ghost. What up, cool kid?
You and I know you ain't about that life.
Drop with me now. Drop with me now. Drop with me now. Drop with me now.
Oh, yeah.
Si